In this lesson, we'll begin working with some site components. Alright, so I'm ready to bring this guy to life. So adding some parking spaces, some vehicles, and people and trees is definitely going to help us get that accomplished. But you'll notice something as we kind of orbit around. It's got some little distortion and some weirdness going on in here. We don't want that. We want to be as clean as we can be with our modeling. So really quickly, I'm just going to select this model. And what happened was, as we began messing with trying to create organic surfaces, a lot of the surfaces actually started bleeding up into our model. So I'm just going to grab my move tool, and I'm going to move this up until I know I'm on that blue axis, and I'm just going to move it up a couple of inches, so we'll say 6. You can see what that did. It should have cleaned up, and you should have this sitting nicely on our surface, but it should make it to where we don't have any ground coming in to our floor plates here, and it cleaned it up, and it's definitely what it did. So if you have that issue and you notice it in your model, just move it up just a little bit, because as we were smoothing the surface, part of the surface just started bleeding up into our model. And you can see here, if you look on the bottom, our model is still sitting on our surface, so it's technically not floating in the air or anything weird like that. Occasionally you have to make those adjustments as you're working with a lot of these smoothing tools, but if you're aware of it and you catch it early, it can be the difference between having a sloppy model and a really nice looking model. So at this point, we're ready to start working with some stuff. So let's get our parking spaces in place. So I really love working with components in SKETCHUP because you have access to the 3D warehouse and maybe even components that you've built yourself. So to get to those, we can go to our window, and I'm going to say components. So what will happen is your component window will pop up, and you can just come in here and type in whatever you need. So in my case, in this searching, I typed in parking stripes, and what appeared was this area here. So click on it. I'm going to move my window. And what you can do now is simply click on download, and this will download directly into your SKETCHUP model. Say yes. And now, I'm going to close out of my components window, is we have our components in place. So we could place these throughout our area here. So I'm going to go ahead and start on, well, we'll start on this side here since they're kind of already oriented in such a way. So I'm going to place my first set of parking stripes in here just a little bit, but I'm going to move it over because we really don't normally have a parking stripe on this edge. So we'll grab the stripe and we'll move it over. And we'll also make it to where it's sitting flat on that surface there. So there we go. First set of parking stripes. So now I'm going to do Control C, Control V, and I'm going to add a few more. But this time when I add this, I'll do it like so. I'm going to grab this corner here, come back to this end, and place it right there. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing with the rest of my parking spots. So the cool thing is, and the important thing is, make sure as you're working, you grab those and you put those on the right layer. So if we do need to turn things off or performance is affected, we can then turn off layers to help us increase that performance. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these, or try to get the rest of these in. So now that I have 2 in place, Control C, Control V, grab this corner and place it up here. And I could probably go with one more set here. So we'll grab this area, Control C, Control V. And we'll grab in here. And again, right at this point, I'm not too worried about accessibility is always important for accessibility spaces. But again, this is our conceptual model here. So we're not too worried about that. So we got a nice number of parking spaces to fit. We just need to know where parking is, where the cars are going to go for scale, and also to get an idea of our solution for this site. So I could see we've got all of our elements in place, but I want to make sure that they're on the right layer. They are, but we need to go ahead and take care of this guy here. So select this last area, right click, and let's soften its edges. So there we go. And don't worry about this crease here. Once we bring this into Google Earth or something like that, these will actually disappear. So, and most of our views won't be coming from that side anyway. So there we go. That's how you actually get your parking spaces in place. I'll let you take care of the rest of the parking, but I am going to go ahead and show you how we can get some cars in place. And then once this lesson's done and we start the next one, you'll notice I'll probably have the rest of our parking in place and a few more cars kind of randomly scattered throughout. But I'm definitely not going to go too out of control with this. So if you reference back to our Google Earth view, what we want to see is how we handle our parking here and here. So I'll kind of scatter some cars out on this side and on that side. So what that means first in our SketchUp model, cars kind of scattered on this side and this side. But I definitely want to show parking spaces in all the areas where there's parking. So to get your cars, just as easy as we did with our parking stripes. Go back to your window, go to Component. I'm going to bring mine over. And now you can type in cars. And it should bring up a car. I'm just going to go with a real basic car. I don't want to get too fancy with my vehicles, but you'll see the wide number of cars we can choose from. Or you can go from the sampled area here. Maybe we want to go this way. This will actually come in our favorites. Let's say transportation. Might give us some different options than what I just found going to the actual warehouse. Yeah, I just want a simple sedan. That'll work for me. So go ahead and download that directly into your project. And now we could just place it where it needs to go. So I could place it anywhere I want to, really. But I want to make sure I rotate it really quick to make sure it's oriented properly. So let's get our rotate button. And I want to rotate it this way, 40 or actually 90 degrees. And now I'm just going to drive it into its parking spot here. So we'll go to Move. We'll make sure he's parked nicely, not going over any lines or anything. And the key here is making sure it's not sinking in your surface or you don't have any floating geometry. That could be the difference between another difference between a sloppy model and a really nice model. So let's just move this one up just a tad. I'm going to take a quick measurement. So I know from here to the surface, 3 3/4. So I'm going to grab my move. Grab your move here. Make sure you're on the blue axis and type in 3 3/4, or you could do 3.75. And that should make it to where it's sitting nicely on my surface. So no sinking cars because this isn't quicksand, and no floating cars because we don't have floating cars yet. So now we can actually come in here and start copying this car over since it's positioned nicely. So Control C, Control V, and it's just a matter of getting it placed where you want it. Control V. There we go. So that takes care of our transportational component for our model here. So I'll let you finish off the rest of these. So what we should do here is, since our model is going to be oriented in this way, go ahead and place in the rest of your parking on this side and this side. We're not going to have anything on that side. But place your parking stripes and just sprinkle in a couple of cars throughout. And you could experiment with your 3D warehouse and you could see if you could find different color cars. And if you can't, pretty sure you can double click on your car here and you can grab your paint bucket. And we'll come up here and we can go to colors named. And we can start adding, maybe some different color vehicles here. So let's say we wanted maybe, we'll go with a red car here. Say red. Should be able to drop it on here and paint your vehicles. So you could change the color if you wanted to add some more character to your components. But that can get a little bit time consuming. But you could definitely do it here. So I'm going to add some character to this guy. Add some pop to my scene. Some red. Takes care of that. And you could see by me updating this one, because I did a Control C, Control V, and these are basically copies of that original component, they're all updated as well. So if I wanted to just have kind of a random placement of color, what I should have done, or what I can do, is I can come back in here now. Let's say we want to keep a couple of red ones. We could say, we could double click on this one, right click. We're going to make it unique. Come back in here, grab your paint bucket again, and the key is make it unique. And now you could paint it and it won't affect all the other ones. See how that works? So using that make unique can help you kind of randomize some things as far as your components as well. And this could be, again, this could be a little bit time consuming, but this might be a nice little touch you can add. And that's if you're using these components. A lot of times for site modeling and stuff, or if you're working on 2D images or some visualization things, you might not use these kind of components. You may actually be using maybe some Photoshop, or maybe you have some other kind of process you're using. But you could definitely take advantage of it. And you can see the benefit of having different color cars in my scene here. So now I can just Control C, Control V, and kind of place these throughout. So as I mentioned before, go ahead and finish out this side here and this side here, place a couple of cars, and then when we come back in the next lesson, I'll have mine finished out. And then what we can do is we'll start working with some vegetation and trees, and I'll show you the benefit of setting it up the way we did with our layers. So I'll meet you in the next lesson where we'll place some trees and vegetation.